Hello everyone, this is Evan, and welcome to my Charizard Pidgeot Masterclass. This is a deck I've been grinding quite a bit lately, and yeah, I just thought I would make another Masterclass because the Goldo EX Masterclass I made a few weeks ago seemed to do very well, so thought I would just do another one of these. I'm going to be going over the deck list and all of the matchups, telling you guys how you want to play all of them, and if there's anything that I missed in this video, just leave it in the comments and I'll get back to you. So, yeah, first of all, I'm going to start off by showing the deck lists. There's not as many ways to play this deck as Goldo, so I'm only going to be showing two deck lists here. The first one is just the Gabriel Fernandez 60 from first place at NAIC and Seniors. So, this list, I think, was pretty decent for the tournament. I did change a few things from my list, but this one is kind of just the baseline for all Charizard Pidgeot lists in this current format. So this is, yeah, kind of just a decent list, but since the meta has changed quite a bit since the NAIC, I have an updated list here, which is right here. So a few things that I changed. First of all, I'm playing two of the Flareveil Charmeleons rather than the 1-1 split. I still have not decided for sure which one is better. The Flareveils are pretty good against Dragult just because, you know, they can't get hit by Phantom Dive. However, it's worse into Grimmsnarl because the 100 HP Charmeleon is better in the Grimmsnarl matchup because you can have one of those on your bench to prepare for the for when your first Charizard gets knocked out and it can get pinged by Frostlass every turn. However, the Charmeleon with Flareveil is also decent in the Grimmsnarl matchup because it gives you a way to play around Devo, so I have not decided for sure which one is better, but currently I am leaning towards the two Flareveils. Other than that, it's pretty similar overall, except for a few other minor changes. I switched out the energy search for a third rare candy because the energy search didn't feel entirely needed. There have been a few situations where it would have been nice, but for the most part, it's just so you have an Arven searchable out to an energy turn one. So if you open like two Poffins and Arven but no energy, you can go Arven for energy search and Team Evo. However, I didn't find it to be entirely necessary because with 7 energies, it's fairly likely that you just open one in your hand anyways, and also energy search is really not that great at any other point in the game. The only other situation it is useful for is so you can have an Arven searchable out to Darkness Energy to put on your Monkey Dory at some point in the mid to late game. But I thought that the third rare candy was a better consistency card overall. It's not necessary to play 3 candies, however, it has seemed very good in the games I've played just because you want to be drawing into it exactly when you need it. And especially if you whiff turn 1 Evo and you have to go for a Cleffa angle instead, the third candy is very nice for those types of situations. And then the last change was I switched out the Picnic Basket for Mist Energy. The Jamming Tower doesn't really do anything against the Isaiah Bradner build of Gardevore, so Mist Energy is really good in that matchup in particular because they can't use Mind Bend on your Charizard. So the Mist Energy is really good in that matchup, and Mist is also good against Grimmsnarl to block TM Devo. So you can just put that on your Charizard, and then they have to basically attack into Charizard twice with Grimmsnarl rather than attacking into it once and then using Devo the next turn. Picnic Basket is really good against Grimmsnarl, and it can also come up against Dragult and Gardevore, but I had to cut something because I really wanted to play the Mist. I wanted to play both the Mist and the third rare candy, so I had to cut something, and the Picnic Basket just seemed like the most reasonable cut overall. But there you have it, guys. That is my updated list. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that I should change about this, because I am open to suggestions. And still on the topic of deck list, there are several different Aspecs that you can play other than the Max Belt. Currently, the Max Belt is the best right now, I think, because it is just... you kind of just need it for the Dragult matchup because it allows you to hit those big numbers earlier on, so you can knock out a Dragult EX once they're at 3 prizes compared to 1 prize. So I think that it is... I think the Max Bow is probably the best one as of right now. However, if you're fine taking a slightly worse Dragapult Dusknoir matchup in favor of one of the other Aspecs, then these are all good options as well. And I'm going to be going over all of these individually, starting with Prime Catcher. So the pros of Prime Catcher are, it's an extra Gust card, which is always active no matter what. So it's basically, yeah, it's just a Gust card that's on an item card, and you can always use it no matter what. Very solid card overall. It's searchable off Arven, and you get to cut down to 1 Counter Catcher, which gives you space to play something else. The cons are that is that you have a worse Pult matchup with no Max Belt, which is basically going to be true for all of these Aspecs. And then also it can occasionally be an underpowered Aspec, because sometimes playing Prime Catcher, which is, you know, just a Gust card in any situation, it seems very good, but in a lot of situations, like using your Aspec just to have like an extra Gust feels kind of bad. It's definitely not the worst Aspec out there. However, it's, you know, kind of just doesn't really help significantly into that many matchups. Like, it's not there for any one particular matchup. It's kind of just an okay card overall. So, that's one option. Your second one is Secret Box. So, the pros are that it's excellent consistency early game, and you can Arven for it. So, if you can find turn 1 Arven, you can Secret Box for, you know, a Puffin, an Artisan, your TM Evo, and then probably an Iono or Arven for the next turn. So it's very good consistency early game. You basically just get everything you need right away. The cons are that, of course, you have the worst Dragapult matchup, and then it's also weaker late game. So if you don't actually find the Secret Box early on, then it's very... it can be very weak towards the end of the game, just because it's not really doing as much. The most it would be doing would really just be finding your boss's orders at the end of the game, just giving you an extra out. But overall, the deck, or the Secret Box, is still pretty decent. It's just maybe not necessary. Like, I don't think the extra consistency boost is really that necessary for the deck. And overall, it's just seems a bit weaker than something like the Max Belt. Trolley, I actually think this one's really bad right now, but I'm still going to be going over it anyways. There have been formats in the past where the Trolley has been good. However, I don't think it's good at all right now. And the reason for that is it's basically only good if you go second and find Arven turn 1. First of all, there's only about a 40% chance that you actually find the Arven within your first 8 cards. So, not great odds of actually finding the Trolley right away. And then also, if you lose the coin flip and have to go first, then you're just basically guaranteed to get a bad setup, especially if your opponent's playing a Badoo deck. Because if you go first, you don't open the Trolley in your hand, which is pretty unlikely, and then they Badoo lock you, like you're just cooked. You just basically didn't set up at all. So I don't think there's really any merit to playing Trolley. The reason you would want to play it is because it allows you to cut down on some ball search cards. So you can just basically use Trolley to set up your board. However, like I said, you don't have the best odds of actually drawing into the Arven turn 1. So you would probably have to play like Pokegears or something to find the Arven, and then at that point, the whole point of playing this card is so you can cut down on other consistency cards. So if you're replacing those consistency cards with worse consistency cards, like, you're not really getting anything out of it, if that makes sense. So I don't think there's really any merit to playing this one right now, but it definitely is an option. Next up, we have Stamp, which I think if you didn't have to I think if you didn't have to tech for like any specific matchup by playing either Cape or Max Belt, Stamp is definitely the best card overall, the best A-Spec overall. However, it's just not really realistic to be able to play it because, you know, it's just... you kind of need your A-Spec to be a tech card for specific matchups, because the issue with playing such a linear deck like Charizard is that sometimes you just have bad matchups, and the A-Specs, playing a tech card for an A-Spec can kind of fix some of those matchups. So it's very good disruption, and it's Arven searchable, and it also just gives you an extra 5 cards. Like if, if Stamp didn't even, like let's say that Stamp just disrupted your opponent and didn't even give you the extra 5 cards, like it wouldn't be nearly as good, because part of what makes Stamp so good is that you can play out your hand entirely, play Stamp, and then try to draw into the other cards you need. So it just gives you like a little extra dig to find the cards you want on that particular turn. And then of course the cons are just not playing Max Belt for Dragapult. The last one is Cape, which I think is the second best option after Max Belt. I actually considered it for a while myself, but ultimately landed on the Max Belt. It's great into Drifloon Guardy because they basically can just never knock out your Charizard, so it makes Drifloon Guardy like very favored, and you don't have to play like Jamming Tower or anything for that matchup. It's also great into Joltik just because they can't really hit those big numbers as easily. And then it's win more into every other matchup. Like basically every matchup it helps at least a little bit into. Like, you know, Raging Bolt needs an extra 2 energies to knock you out. And then, well, actually, I guess just an extra 1 energy. Then you have Dragapult, which they basically just can't 2-shot any of your Pokemon, really. Like your, you know, Pidgeot or Charizard. It's good into really just everything. And then the cons are, of course, no Max Belt for Dragapult, because even with the Cape, your Dragapult mashup is still pretty bad if you're not playing the Max Belt, so that's really the only bad thing about playing Cape. Otherwise, this card definitely is better than Max Belts, if you didn't have to worry about Dragapult. So next up, we have the matchup spread. Raging Bolt, I think, is a 55-45 matchup. Gardevore is 60-40, and Grimmsnarl is 55-45, so you're slightly favored into all of those, although realistically, all of them are pretty close to even, except for Gardevore. Gardevore is more favored than the other two, but both of these are close to even. Dragapult Dusknoir, even with the Max Belt, is slightly unfavored. However, it is definitely not that bad. Only a 45-55. I think straight Dragapult is much more favored. Charizard Dragapult is also slightly favored. Flareon Noctowl, I think, is actually one of the best matchups for the deck, especially if you're playing Mist Energy. I think you should be beating that matchup most every time. Joltik Box is one of the harder matchups, and then Goldango's, like, pretty free. So now for the specific matchups. Raging Bolt, just some notes here. This matchup is favored if you can set up. However, sometimes they just are able to prevent you from setting up. Like, this matchup plays out very similar to the Goldango versus Raging Bolt matchup, which I went over in the last Masterclass, which is basically, if you set up, you're favored, but if you don't set up and get 2 prizes behind, it can get very tough very quickly. So this matchup is favored if you can set up, and also the good news about this matchup compared to the Goldango matchup is you actually have more comeback potential with, like, Chi-Yu, which is what I put right here. If you get behind Chi-Yu, then, or if you can get behind Chi-Yu plus Iono Countercatcher can make a comeback. That is definitely something to keep in mind, because if they take the first 2 prize cards, it normally would look pretty grim in that situation. However, you definitely can make some pretty strong comebacks if you're able to get the Chi-Yu attacks in, which I'll get into in a minute. And then if you take the first 2, you're basically automatically in a winning position as long as you have a halfway decent board. So this is going to be their ideal turn 1 attack. Basically, this is like their best case scenario right here. If they can get the Raging Bolt turn 1, going first, attach an energy, pass, and then the next turn they can attach the other energy, knock towel for like area 0 Judge, and then Judge, and just knock out a Pidgey with Thunderburst Storm. That's basically their ideal setup. If you evoed into Charmeleon Pidgeotto, then if they're playing E-Switch, it can also be really devastating if they're able to E-Switch a third energy onto the Raging Bolt and still Judge and knock out the Pidgeotto. That can be very devastating for sure. So that's basically like their best case scenario. However, if they're not able to find all the pieces for this combo, Fenrotom attack is also pretty decent. So your response here is you kind of just need to find a decent hand off of the Judge to be able to automatically put yourself in a winning position. So right here, you know, they just knocked out my Pidgey. These are my 5 cards from Judge. So this hand is actually pretty solid overall. I would Ultra Ball the Puffin, Fire Energy. Assuming that I have all 3 of my other energies in the deck here, I would grab out the Pidgeot with the Ultra Ball, evolve the Pidgeotto, Quick Search for a Counter Catcher, and then Infernal Rain to charge up 2 energies on Chi-Yu, and then 1 on the Charizard, knock out the Ogerpon. Yeah, just knock out this Ogerpon here, and then you're just in a winning position automatically. However, I understand drawing that well is not going to happen every game, so now I'm going to get into the lines for if you don't happen to draw exactly what you need, and you get behind what you should do then. So coming back from -2 prizes, so let's just assume here that we drew a hand that is not great off of this Judge, and we whiff the attack. We just have to pass again. They're just going to take another knockout here with the Raging Bolt. So they're at 4 prizes, we're still at 6. So what we would have to do here is we're going to have to find some way to get the Chi-Yu online and get a Counter Catcher and Iono. So we would Counter Catcher their Ogerpon, Iono them to 4, knock out the Ogerpon, and what this does is it puts them in a very awkward spot, because we're tied 4 prizes to 4 at this point, and they have 2 options. Either they can just knock out the Chi-Yu, take 1 prize, so we just take a knockout with the Charizard EX, they knock out our Charizard EX, and then we can charge up a second Charizard EX and just win the game. So that is one way we win the prize trade. Their other option is if they can find Prime Catcher, knock out Pidgeot with the Raging Bolt EX, in which case they're leaving the Chi-Yu on the board. So then we can just go Iono to 2 Counter Catcher, if we can find all of that, and then knock out their Ogerpon, and then it's 2 prizes to 2, and if they lose, we just, or if they whiff the attack, I mean, which is unlikely they would find it, since they had already used Prime Catcher at that point, we just promote the Charizard EX and win the game. So that's why Chi-Yu is definitely very, very powerful in this matchup. Just having the 1 prize attacker that can knock out their Ogerpons can definitely swing the prize trade back into your favor in a lot of situations that look unfavorable. And then if they're at 3 prizes, so let's just say with this board state, they take their 2nd prize card, we whiff again, and they take a 3rd prize card, and it's 6 to 3. Then we're in a bad spot at this point. Like, at this point, it's unlikely we're going to win, but there are still some things we can do. At this point, you just basically scrap the entire idea of going for Chi-Yu, because they're at 3 prize cards, they have to take 2 knockouts no matter what, so attacking with Chi-Yu is actually just going to give them an easy prize card, and that's actually really bad. So just don't attack with Chi-Yu at this point. Just try to attack twice with Charizard while disrupting them with Iono, and hopefully on one of the turns they'll whiff an attack and you can win. Because if they just whiff the attack for 1 turn and you're able to take 4 prize cards with the same Charizard in this situation, then you do win the prize trade at that point. So yeah, that's your other line there, if they take 3 prizes before you can take any. Next up, we have the Gardevore matchup. So this matchup is pretty close if you don't play any techs and they draw well, which is why I definitely do recommend teching for this matchup. Gemming Tower is good against the Drifloon build, like Riley McKay's 2nd place list from NAIC, and then Mist is good for the no Drifloon build, which would be something like Isaiah Bradner's 1st place list. So typically in this matchup, your your prize map is going to be 1-1-2-2. You're going to knock out 2 1-prizers at the start. Then you're going to boss either Gardevore or Fez, whichever hurts their setup the most. And then you're going to take your last 2 prize cards by bossing the other one. So, yeah, the things to keep in mind in this matchup: Scream Tail Snipe from them early game, and Mind Bend late game can get very scary. So, yeah, I'm going to teach you guys how to play around those situations as well. So here is our ideal setup, which this is basically our ideal setup in just about every matchup. Just go first, try to get multiple Pokemon down, and then TM Evo into a Charmeleon and a Pidgeotto. And then, you know, in our next turn, we can, depending on what they do, we can Ultra Ball for Chi-Yu and Pidgeotto, grab out our Pidgeot, and then Iono, and see what cards we get off of that, and then determine what our Quick Search will be, and so on. Their setup is typically going to look something like this. They're going to, you know, play like some researches, draw some cards, get some guys on the bench, and then they're going to want to Evo into 2 different Kirlias, and then at this point, their hand is actually pretty good. They can go Ultra Ball those 2 for a Gardevore EX, they can research, and yeah, see what they draw into, and then they would most likely be sniping one of our Pokemon, depending on what we leave on their board. Well, I guess in this situation, if we Iono, they'd be getting a new hand anyways, but, you know, yeah, I guess, like, you know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, they would just want to Scream Tail something on our bench, and we're kind of put in an awkward spot there, but still very manageable overall. But yeah, Scream Tail is definitely their most powerful attacker in the early game. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to this matchup. It's just, you know, save Jamming Tower until you can either take a knockout on the Drifloon with the Jamming Tower if they're playing the Drifloon build, or if they don't Drifloon at all early game, then you can just Iono plus Jamming Tower to stop them from finding the pieces for the Drifloon, hopefully. So that's how you play the Drifloon matchup. And then in the no Drifloon matchup, it's really just put Mist on Charizard and start knocking things out. If you put Mist on Charizard early game, there's not a whole lot they can do because Mind Bend just doesn't confuse you, so they just can't really hit the big numbers early game. Next up, we have the Grimmsnarl matchup. With some amount of text, this matchup is favored. Picnic Basket, Mist Energy, and Monkey are all very good cards for this matchup. All great options for healing off your Pokemon because they're going to be trying to spread damage around and then set up a big Devo play at some point. You want to, like, chase Frostlasses early game, and then once they've taken enough prize cards, you can start knocking out their Grims. But yeah, just chasing the Frostlasses is really, really powerful in this matchup because it's hard for them to consistently get those down, so if you just knock those out enough, then they're just not really putting that much damage on the board. 100 HP Charmeleon, like I mentioned earlier, is pretty good in this matchup, but so is the 90 HP. And then, of course, play around Devo, because unless they just, like, research away the Devo early on, you have to play around Devo, because they're going to be, yeah, they're going to be trying to set up a big Devo play at some point. So, your ideal setup here, really just the same as every other matchup, just Evo turn 1. And then their setup is generally going to look something like this, where they're going to probably get like a Monkey down, get some of their basics down, like, you know, Impidimp, Snorunt, stuff like that. And then they're going to Evo typically into Morgrim and Frostlass. And sometimes they're not even going to get the second Snorunt in play, in which case, like, if you boss their Frostlass, they're just like, you're just in a great spot at that point. But even with this situation where they were lucky enough to actually get both of the Snowrunts down and Evo one of them, bossing Frostlass is still really good at this point because you're still forcing them to find the Frostlass, and then also most likely they want a Night Searcher as well to get back the other Snowrunt, and if they whiff, you just boss their other Frostlass, and they have no Frostlasses in play now. So yeah, that's just it's just really, really important to be chasing those Frostlasses early game. I can't stress that enough. It is incredibly important to be knocking those out. And yeah, that's really all there is to this matchup. Just don't play into Devo, knock out the Frostlasses, and then once they've taken enough prize cards, you can start. You can usually just win by knocking out 2 Grimmsnarls at the late game. Dragapult Dusknoir, the longer the game goes, the more likely you are to win. For the most part, this matchup is going to be lost if they are able to set up like a 3-prize turn by knocking out your Pidgeot as well as your backup Pidgey. So to play around that, you need to be setting up 2 Pidgeots ideally, but you should be careful benching Pidgey mid-game. There will be some times where I actually just don't bench the second Pidgey because I don't want to give them that extra knockout off of the Phantom Dive, so sometimes it comes down to just saying, alright, if you have it, you have it, and I won't play the rest of the game with Pidgeot. But there are also some situations where benching Pidgey is fine, so it's kind of just one of those things where you have to play it by ear. Max Belt allows you to knock out a Pult when they have 3 prizes left, compared to 1 prize card, or 2 if they, if you can get Monkey in play. So yeah, Max Belt is really good in this matchup in particular. Chasing Duskulls early is also very good. I'm gonna kind of go more into depth on how to know when it's best to chase the Duskulls in just a second. So just hold that thought. The matchup is very slightly unfavored just because of the board wipe plays they have, but it is close overall. Typically, their game plan is going to be like go Dusknoir, Pidgeot, Countercatcher, and then knock that out, and just hope that you don't find what you need for the rest of the game. And yeah, that's basically how it goes. This is like the best case scenario set up here. They get like 3 Dracloaks and 2 Dusclops, and they're itchy pollening. Like, this is basically the best that can happen. And killing Pidge, yeah, which I kind of already went over a second ago. Let's just assume this is our setup. We just now took the 1 prize knockout on their Badoo. They can just promote this Dracloak, you know, draw some cards, and then they'll like Dusknoir our Pidge, Countercatcher the Pidge, and Ultra Ball for the Dragapult to knock out the Pidge, and they'll also put 60 on the Pidgey. So then they've taken 3 prizes there, so we're going to have to, at that point, Arven for Max Belt and knock out their Dragapult. And then we're still in a winning position there because they have 3 prize cards and we have 2 at that point. So, yeah, unless they can find like another Dusknoir play, like Dusknoir plus Hawlucha or something, which ideally we're going to evolve this Charmander into a Charmeleon anyway, so that's not even really an option. So we're kind of just in a good spot overall. So yeah, kind of just some prize mapping tips there. If they pull off the combo, then yeah, I already explained that. And then also when to know when it's correct to kill the Dusclops. So let's say they have like 1 Dusclops and 1 Duskull here. Most lists are cutting the candies now, so if you just kill the Dusclops, they cannot get a Dusknoir online next turn. So yeah, if they have like 1 Dusclops in play, or 1 Dusclops and 1 Duskull, killing the 1 Dusclops is almost always going to be better than killing a Dracloak. However, in a situation like this where they have 2 Dusclops in play, it would be better to just target down a Dracloak. Next up we have the straight Dragapult. I didn't actually make any board states for this matchup because overall you play the matchup in a similar way as Pult Dusk, but you're just more favored because they don't have the Dusknoir line. So yeah, just play this matchup cautiously. Use Monkey, and if you have it, Picnic Basket to heal your Pokemon. It makes it hard for them to set up their multi-prize turns. Max Belt is once again very good, and Mist is also good. So yeah, that's really all I'm going to go into for this matchup because it's a similar matchup overall. Dragapult Charizard is also very similar. For the most part, this is kind of just a mirror match, except you're playing Pidge and they're not. So just having that Pidgeot is so good in this matchup because you can search out the exact pieces you need every turn. and they're relying on just drawing into what they need with the Dragults, so disruption is better against them. But yeah, Dragapult is not a huge threat because they're not really playing any of the powerful cards like Dusknoir to pair with it, so Dragapult is probably going to be their main attacker early game, but for the most part, you're not too threatened by that. This matchup is just fine. Like, it's not awful. It's just fine, like slightly favored, I'd say. Flareon Noctowl. This is one of the best matchups, especially if you play Mist. If you don't play Mist, I think you're still favored by a little bit, but there's definitely more things they can do. Because their main strategy is just going to be like spamming Sylveon on your Pidgeot and Charizard to make it hard to actually keep your board set up. So that's really just their main strategy. But with Mist, you can just put that on Charizard and they can never shuffle it back. And if you put Mist on Charizard, like, they just can't win a prize trade because, you know, they're two-shotting you with Carnelian, and you're one-shotting them back as long as they have taken 2 prize cards. So, Mist Charizard is just so good in this matchup. Like, yeah, I think that if you set up, you should realistically be winning this matchup most of the time anyways, and this is kind of just like what your setup is typically going to look like in this matchup. Then we have the Dual Tickbox matchup. This is a rough matchup because they can fairly easily take 2 prizes every turn, and they have the Galvantula, which is a 1-prize attacker. So, if you ever have to kill the Galvantula, it's best to do it with Chi-Yu because, you know, Chi-Yu is a 1-prize attacker, so they would have to have a Iron Hands charged up at that point, and you most likely have already killed the Iron Hands, so, yeah, so Chi-Yu is generally your best attacker for killing a Galvantula. And in this matchup, you kind of need Disruption to stick. If both players are drawing perfectly, they should be winning most of the time. So you kind of need them to get some rough draws off the Disruption to be able to win. Like, you're going to have to, you know, Iono them to 2 most likely, hope they whiff, and if they do, you can just win the next turn. So I didn't actually do any board states for this matchup either, just because this matchup, like, you know, there's really no secrets for this matchup. It's just, either it works or it doesn't, really. Like, this matchup is not that exciting. Goldango, this matchup is probably one of the best matchups you can ask for. It's very favored because of Chi-Yu. As long as you don't brick, you should be winning the prize trade almost every time, because Chi-Yu is a 1-prize attacker that knocks out their 2-prize attacker, so just set up and you're fine. And yeah, this is kind of just what your standard board state is going to look like in this matchup. The last matchup I'm going to be going over is Crustle, and also just like the Milotic Cornerstone Walls deck. I'm including this one because of a request from a subscriber, so I'm going to be going over how to play these matchups. I only included notes for Crustle, but I'm also going to go into like Cornerstone, Milotic in a second as well. So in the Crustle matchup, basically, you just hope they don't get multiple Crustles charged up to where they can chain those attacks, because if they can only get like 1, maybe 2 Crustles online, you can just Chi-Yu back-to-back and knock out their Crustles, and they most likely just won't have enough energies on their board to actually close out the game. So yeah, Chi-Yu is just very good in this matchup. If they knock out Chi-Yu enough times, or if you're unable to chain it due to reasons like having super odds prized, or having some Charizard pieces prized, whatever the case may be, you definitely can lose. So I don't think this matchup's that great. I actually haven't really tested it much, but I'd imagine it's a pretty close matchup. And yeah, usually they're going to be trying to like charge up multiple Crustals before they actually start attacking, because if they go too aggressive with the Crustals, then they can just lose to Chi-Yu. And then against the Milotic Cornerstone Wall deck, that matchup is pretty much an auto loss. You have like no way around the Milotic, so if you hit that matchup, it's either they brick or you lose, pretty much. Which, yeah, that's basically all I I hate to say it, like, I wish I could give some better advice on that matchup, but really there's not much at all you can do in that matchup. It's almost unwinnable if they can set up. So yeah, there you have it, guys. That is the end of the masterclass. If you enjoyed it, just hit the like button and subscribe. These masterclasses really do take quite a bit of effort to make. So I would appreciate any support I could get, such as like a subscription or whatever. So if you want to do that type of thing, then I would greatly appreciate it. If not, that's okay as well. You definitely don't have to if you don't want to. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If I missed anything, put it in the comments and I will get back to you. Alright, I'll see you.